Bun găsit, doamnelor, domnilor, sunt Marius Constantinescu. Astăzi, la Ediție limitată, am plăcerea de a vă prezenta două autoare de limbă spaniolă pe care le desparte un ocean, Oceanul Atlantic, pentru că una este din Mexic, cealaltă din Spania, dar le apropie aplecarea către faptul istoric și către metaforă mereu fluidă. Sofia Segovia din Mexic și Ana Merino din Spania, ambele sunt publicate în România de către editura Littera. Născută la Monterrey, în Mexic, Sofia Segovia a studiat comunicarea, pregătindu-se inițial pentru o carieră de jurnalist. S-a dovedit totuși că ficțiunea rămâne prima și constanta ei mare dragoste, drept care și-a făcut mai întâi mâna, drept copywriter pentru mesaje politice ale unor diverse campanii electorale și apoi ghostwriter pentru mai multe volume. A cucerit celebritate internațională odată cu romanul Zborul albinelor, carte de mari dimensiuni care descrie o frescă amplă a istoriei Mexicului, infuzată însă de acel realism magic atât de caracteristic pentru zona creativă și intelectuală a Americii Latine. Cartea a câștigat în 2019 premiul Romanul Anului, conferit de către iTunes, și a fost la nivel internațional în top 10 cele mai descărcate cărți în format audio la nivel mondial. Cartea cucerește cititorii de pe toate meridianele prin tandrețea și atașamentul pe care îl generează instantaneu cu personajele descrise în mod plauzibil și cu mult afect, am putea spune, tipic mexican.
Sofia Segovia, thank you so much for accepting this interview for the Romanian audience. It's a pleasure to have you as our guest.
It's my pleasure. I love to be here, and I love to know that the murmur of bees is out in Romanian, and it's very exciting.
It's actually right next to me, and I was going to ask our first question and to start our interview by pointing out how beautiful this cover is. And I was curious, how important is it to you that your books present themselves in this charming way to your audience, to your public?
You know, I think, content is king, right? Of course. But the cover says a lot. And I do think that a beautiful cover with such beautiful colors, so summery, so full of spring too, I really think it's the first hook to catch a reader, and then of course the content. But I love this cover. I love the colors. It's the most orangey of all the covers, and I love that.
You are very active, always in close contact with your readers. You answer their questions, you comment on their impressions. On the Goodreads platform, you are always there, always answering, always making yourself present. Does it help you in your activity as a writer?
Well, I think so. I think it's very important to me because first and foremost, I'm a reader. And so I understand, and I will never forget that part of me. It's a big part. And I understand what it is to be on the other side, on the receiving end of a message, a big message that is a novel. And I really think, and maybe it's my philosophy, I'm a communicator. I studied communications, and I really think it's important the emitting end of a message, then the message, and the receiving end of a message. That makes us human, right? That's part of our process. And why not start conversations? Right? There is a big message in this novel, and I love the conversation, and it's a conversation starter. Why not participate in it? And I'm very passionate about this novel, all my novels, and I also am amazed when I talk to readers and discover that it's not me that finish finishes a novel, it's the reader. And with their interpretation, it shows me how free we are inside our minds, right? So I never want to quit doing that. I get enriched with this ongoing conversation, and I do try to be very present, and I never want to go away.
Every writer, every author, every creator in all sorts of fields sometimes needs this urge, why not, to isolate herself or himself in order to populate her or his inner universe.
Yes, it's I've noticed this because you know what happened, Marius? It was the pandemic. Okay, when the first translation came out, it was in 2019, and then came the pandemic, and the book in Spanish is 7 years now. It was published, but during the pandemic, I knew that I had to. I felt this calling to give my time, because I knew readers would need to sink into reading again, or those readers that didn't have much time anymore, they would go back to reading, or even new readers would discover reading. And I knew that we needed to feel close to each other. And so I opened up my time, absolutely. And I think the first year of the pandemic, in average, I had one book club a day, even Sundays. And it was part of my pandemic therapy, my motivation to get up every morning and talk to people and feel close to people. And then the second year, I did start to say, okay, now I'm cutting down the time I give to the readers, and I just select a few days a month to do this. But it's still very important. I miss it. I do miss it.
With the murmur of the bees, you made readers all over the world talk once again about the magical realism, a literary genre that originated and found one of its most prominent expressions in Latin America. Which are the books that you grew up with?
Well, I did grow up reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez's short stories, and they fascinated me because I was very young, and it turned out it made me see that we are never done with short stories. I thought short stories were for little kids, and then I went into his writing, and I loved the short stories, especially. They really, I do think that they made me. But at the same time, I went into writing The Murmur of Bees and didn't realize that I was going to write the magical aspect in this historical-based novel. It took me by surprise, but I let it. And I think that's when I think magical realism cannot be planned. That's what I think, right? If I had planned it, it would not have turned out okay. It would have been contrived.
I was very curious, and since I am somebody who discovered magical realism through Gabriel Garcia Marquez, of course, I was very curious, and I was planning to ask you that. Why do you think that Latin America, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, Peru makes the cradle of this hypnotical mixture between fantasy and reality?
Well, I really think that if you look closely to our histories, you can tell, especially here in Mexico, that's what I can talk about in this novel. For example, the real reason a whole region changed its crops, it was because a president said, you know what? I have a farm with little orange trees, and so I'm going to protect myself and say that if they want to take away the land from all the share that the landowners, they cannot take away land with fruit trees, because I have fruit trees. I think that's pretty much out there, a little kind of fantastic world where you can build the reality around you. And we are full of these little kinds of stories where government can change the destiny of a whole people because it's convenient to one person, right? I think it starts with being a bit sarcastic about it and saying, oh, it's magical. Yeah. And what I did here was say, you know what? This is history, but I am a novelist. And I can, we have an expression in Spanish that we say, if we don't like it, we put flowers on it. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't like that. And I put flowers on it, literally, through fiction, right? And I said, you know what, president of the past, it's not you who decided this destiny for this land. It's the bees and the flowers.
And the world you depict in your novel, The Murmur of the Bees, is indeed intoxicating, is full of saturated colors and also full of overwhelming emotions. How do you remain the master of your own writings? I mean, do they come to possess you at a certain point?
Yes, at a certain point.
I was hoping for you to answer that.
But I do realize at the same time, I never leave my strategy behind, of course. It just, but at the same time, I do recognize that I'm a writer that writes with the gut. I believe in the gut. And I think that's where creativity lives. And I do follow my gut wherever it takes me. And of course, I do go through my brain and make these decisions. This makes sense. This doesn't make sense, or whatever. But following my gut, that's how I discovered a main character who doesn't speak, or a guy who comes back from the dead, or those types of things. And I love that. And I do give myself permission to explore. But I never take my eye off the purpose, right? The ending. When I start a novel, I know where I want to start and where I want to go. And all these little roads I take in the middle, I give the meandering. I give myself permission, but I always try to go back. And that's the purpose. And I think it came about in The Murmur of Bees.
You know, many books today are explored through their audio versions. Do you perceive a certain difference in the way the books are received, understood, and eventually and hopefully loved in reference to their manners of reaching the reader?
Well, I do love audiobooks. I have to say that audiobooks give us more time to read, so I really love that. And I think we can reach out to more readers this way, because there are readers in potential readers who don't go into reading because they have some difficulty, and it's not only visual difficulty in itself, but concentrating through this eyesight, and they never go into reading, and they say, no, reading, it's very boring. But then they're more leaning into listening. And it's a discovery for them, going into audiobooks. And I think we have to take advantage of every type of reading. I always say I am a very opportunistic reader. I take the opportunity to read anywhere. So if I'm out of the house, maybe an audiobook or a Kindle or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Reading is reading. But audiobooks, they do give dimension to the reading, to the novel, if it's done right. I love a very, very well done audiobook, and I do think they drive you to different or they can to different profundity, different places.
Well, in my opinion, your novel is also about childhood. It's innocence, but also the way we part from this blessed period in one's life. Looking around the world in times of war and pandemic, just like in your book, what lesson should we emphasize to our children?
Well, to our children, family is first, absolutely. But I want to talk more about what should we tell historians.
Okay.
And it's very important, I think, because right now what we're looking in Ukraine, okay, we can see it. We're witnesses to it. But if we connect with history, we realize that we have never taken a good look at childhood in times of strife. We don't take them into consideration. We don't take women into consideration. And that's what I wrote from that perspective. I wanted to tell the story. It's, okay, there's war. War is very important. But see what war feels like when you're a child, what war feels like when you're a woman, and you will never be in the history books. But still, war leaves a mark, right? And so I wanted to tell childhood and also old age and womanhood from a history that never looks at them, right? And so this is a very, very close look at childhood, and that's something I'm very interested in. Also in Tears of Amber, Peregrinos, it's childhood. Everything is childhood, because at the end, if we like literature and we like being told stories, we like to be told the beginning, right? And that's also what we can tell children. You might be a child, but every day counts. Every day counts to have a wonderful youth or a wonderful adult life or whatever. Every day counts. I know the story of the history of Romania very well, but here in Mexico, we tell our history more or less in these words. We come from men, strong men, tenacious men. And I have never known a case of a man creating babies, right, on their own.
Yes.
So we have to start to change the narrative, and that's why what I want to do here. Mexican history is told from a very
point of view, primarily, yes,
gender-centric point of view. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if you were to ascribe a color to your novel, The Murmur of the Bees, what would it be?
Well, it would be two, green and orange, because those are the colors that saved so many lives in Linares, and saved the land too, because when they planted the orange trees, they were able to keep at least some of their land.
Now, for the end of our interview, maybe a rather bizarre question. If you were to choose a voice, since we have been talking about voices that tell the stories, well, a voice to retell the story from The Murmur of the Bees, would it be a child's voice or an adult's voice?
The thing is, I believe an adult is never encapsulated. You have to go back to childhood. I cannot leave my childhood. So It's a strange answer, but what I've
the question
thought
is
I missed.
Strange in itself.
Yeah, but I think I would actually, I have never lamented going to an old man telling this story, because he has the whole story. When he remembers it, right? When he remembers he has the whole story. And I love that he could convey what it felt like to be a child. And I think that we have to hold on to our childhood, really. I think, and I love that I never stopped being a reader. And I think this reading has become my bridge to this sensation of being a child. I remember how it felt like not to reach high places, or how it felt, or this wonderment, or whatever. So I think a child has a voice, but an older man has the whole story. And I love that. But still, he gives voice to his child, his inner child. And I thought that was good too. I would not change a thing. I'm sorry.
Născută în 1971 la Madrid, în Spania, Ana Merino este fiica binecunoscutului romancier iberic José María Merino. Astăzi, Ana Merino este titulara Catedrei de Studii Culturale Hispanice și de Creative Writing la University of Iowa. Inițial o poetă inspirată, Ana Merino este și o romancieră de succes, iar romanul său, Harta Sentimentelor, a primit în anul 2020 cel mai important premiu acordat în Spania pentru opere de ficțiune în proză, Premiul Nadal.
Professor Merino, I have loved to wander around your map of effects to meet Valeria, David, Aurora, Tom, Lillian, Marcus, and this is just parts of the characters that weave a genuine tapestry of relations. Now, for the beginning of our talk, have you ever thought about your novel in such a visual and in the same time textual way?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because I have a passion for people, and this novel is the essence of people moving around and sharing their life. So that is the concept. But at the same time, I came from poetry. I started my career as a writer, as a poet. So I have a lot of interest on the rhythm of words. I like, to combine the emotional aspects of characters with the careful combination of light, colors, sensations in the way poetry does. So there is a combination of thoughts, emotions of characters, and at the same time, a very craft, development of the text. So I really appreciate, Marius, your perspective, because it's that what is happening in the book.
Well, that makes me even happier. As you have already said, your sensibility dwells in poetry, I would say. Of course, I was very curious about the way poetry infuses your prose, your fiction. How does it happen?
Well, because there is a rhythm in the lettering, a rhythm in the sentences, and also every chapter is like a poem itself. Every chapter works as a closed poem where you can learn about the soul of the character, the emotions, the fears. So in some ways it was, combining a poetic sense of human nature, human sensations, human love, the ability of develop affections. So that was pretty important. So I think there was a conscious selection of ideas on that sense.
El Mapa de los Afectos is a novel with many cardinal points, I would say, that is with many, many characters. How do you structure, and first and foremost, how do you control such a vast array of typologies, of names, and also of contexts and situations?
Well, I think that comes from my own experience living in the US. I've been there for almost 27 years. So I was perceiving a society, a very complex society, but everyone has a different idea about what is the United States. So in the novel, you can see the trip, one place of different people. There is some Spanish characters. There is a lot of US characters. So they travel and they cross each other. And also I had a lot of interest on the age. Everyone has to be combined and to meet each other and to interact to each other. So in the novel, I was looking for characters in different times of life, but also different group of societies.
You may find my question candid or rather funny, but how do you do to remember, to memorize the names, the characters, their interactions? Do you have like tricks, unknown tricks? Maybe, I don't know, when a character dies, a puppet goes into a drawer and stays there and it's out of the picture. How do you do it?
Well, I think you embrace your characters. As I am a teacher also, I teach at the University of Iowa. So you know the names of all your students. You have a class of 35 students, you know all of them, you know the problems, you know how they are, taking the classes, how things are going. So it's the same technique. It's like a classroom. So you know every character is like you have a classroom when you are teaching and they tell you things and you have to grade them and help them to develop their knowledge. So in that matter, I like that sensation. I think came at natural when I developed the book as a group of people. So there was you learn how they should be, you choose their name, you imagine their life, even you don't tell everything in their life, but you have this sensation that you know them pretty well.
Okay. There is constant movement in your book. Your heroes and your heroines never cease to act or to react, even when they have left the premises. They live and keep living. It is a novel about the small pieces that build life, actually.
Yes, I love the small details. I love the poetic sense of the instant in our life, how even the life who can be very simple at the same time has a lot of energy. So in the novel, you see the beauty of the energy of simple people who gave meaning to society, who gave meaning to all of us.
Another impression I had while reading your novel is that there can never be utter solitude. Even when we consider ourselves alone and isolated, somehow we come to mark someone else's life. Am I going too far with my own reading?
No, I think I truly believe, I think your reading is perfectly right, because life, the meaning of life is the way we interact with others. So it's true that some of the characters are in solitude, but when we learn more about them, we realize they have connections with others and they have an impact on other people, and the way they behave, they have meaning and they make other people think. Even the most difficult people create an impact on others. So I really like that chain of connections who create human meaning, because what I was looking at the book is the reader has to be active. I didn't want a passive reader. I think there is a lot of products who are pretty interesting, but that's super passive. So you read, you entertain yourself, and it's gone. But I want the book to be a space for meditation, an active thinking, to have critical thinking, to put yourself in the place of the characters, to make decisions, to try to understand, to have thoughts.
Well, although you depict the most intense feelings, love, hatred, disappointment, rage, fear, you do it with a certain delicacy or a certain softness, I would say. Are you ever tempted to go beyond that line?
Well, I truly believe literature can investigate that softness. I think literature can go through the godness, the goodwill, the concept of the goodwill, that as a literary concept, I think is very fascinating, because in Spain we came from the tradition of Don Quixote, that is goodness. He's trying his best. Even things are a disaster, he believes in godness, in help the others, in the ability to be for the others. So I really like that sensation, because there is a lot of literature who investigate darkness and evilness and things like that. And that is an interesting concept, but I think the beauty of the human, this kind of philosophical beauty of why we understand each other, why do we believe in universal love, why do we believe in passion for things, why do we believe in innocence, the innocence of giving to the other, that kind of feelings, that kind of living approach that makes society to resist against evil can be a very interesting substance for literary creation. So I was looking for that.
I really like this sentence about the literary substance. I would go beyond what you say and assert that the feelings make for a common language, or even a map that we pursue in our own quest to find what defined us as humans. How do you adjust with currently using two languages to express yourself?
Well, I think to have to use two languages is always an adventure, because you are different. You are different characters in different languages. For people, when I speak in English, I'm very sweet, and in Spanish, I have a strong temper. So it's very, very fascinating. But I like the experience of living in different countries and learning their languages. When I was in the Netherlands many years ago as a student, I learned Dutch. So then I moved to the US and I improved my English. So I have a passion for language. I believe in the beauty and the musicality. I was very, very happy when the novel got translated, because I was trying to read the beauty of the language itself of the Romanian. So has something very magical. Every language has a beauty. So for me, it's always an experience to be in different atmospheric countries, languages, meeting people, trying to understand the way they express themselves. So for me, it's always an adventure.
Which is your routine as a writer? What do you need to have around you in order to assure you the best mood for you to write?
Okay, one thing I do always is I write everything by hand. So I always have notebooks with me, everything. I write diaries, I always write it. So I always write by hand, always. So I write normally the first version of everything I do by hand and in notebooks. That is super important. I really like to use different colors, pencils, I love to use colors. I am very drawing person. I also draw the characters sometimes, the landscapes. I really like to envision what I'm going to do. That I love. So normally I will wake up very early in the morning, because if I have to teach and, so I really like to take the early morning sensation. So I will wake up very early, will have my coffee, my nice breakfast. I really like fruit. So I will, I can do a routine of feeling good. And then I will sit and write by hand. Several chapters, several ideas for a few hours, 2 or 3 hours. Then I will have
every day.
If I am in the mood of a book, yes. If I'm writing poetry, yeah, like I will try to do 3-4 days a week. I will try to, if I am in the middle of a novel or a big piece or an essay, I will try to take the early mornings of the day, because they are fundamental on my routine. Then I will go to work sometimes, because I have to teach at the university, or if I am in tour, I will have travel, things like that. So I really like to take the early morning. And at the end of the day, when I finish whatever I'm doing, I will, pass the handwriting to my computer.
I suppose the handwriting makes you somehow inhabit your context, your characters, your situations in a more personal way, right?
Absolutely, because then I draw things, I look for words, I change color, and I underline things. I do structures, I do summarize. So I really like the drawing process of doing my book is very, very nice in that sense. So it's why I really enjoy, because even I write a diary every day. Every day I use the notebook a lot. So I'm very attached to handwriting because even I think the process of writing by hand makes you use different parts of the brain. Then when by night I'm typing what I wrote, in the morning, I go back to what was the last part of the day, what I work. So it's why early in the morning I'm very active, because I went to sleep with the editing version of what I did in the early morning. So it's a pretty nice, and I really enjoy doing it.
You also teach creative writing. Can experience, technique, and hard work compensate an average talent?
Besides teaching in the university, in the University of Iowa, that is a very well known, I create the MFA in Spanish creative writing, so it's a very well known place for writers. So we have that space, and I think it's very, very important. But I also do a lot of community workshops in Iowa with the Latino communities, and sometimes I go to Latin America. So I develop also this idea of community, creative community, and how creativity can have an impact on communities, on society. Well, for the people, if you love to write, you also, if you want to be a good writer, you need to read. I give a lot of recommendations to youth writers to really read. And when you read, think why the novel you just read, you love that much, to have a kind of critical thinking of the authors you love. That will help you a lot to develop your talent. And again, if you read a lot, if you write a lot, and if you work hard, I think talent is something that can build. The same way you build resistance in your body when you run every day, and then you can end being a good runner. It's true that there is people who has a natural ability, and you look at them and say, oh my God, that person has a natural ability. But sometimes that person with a very natural ability and an amazing talent, they make their life a mess. They don't have any control. They suddenly, they destroy their talent, making wrong decisions, having too much ego. So I'm like, I've been many years watching writers, and sometimes people who you think maybe is not the more talented of the group, that hasn't the most, kind of natural talent, then they have a kind of intelligence to develop talent, to learn how to understand words, to read, to work hard, that at the end, they can do a really good literary piece. Meanwhile, the person who you saw with an amazing natural talent, they didn't have a talent for life, and the end, not having the tenacity, the working tenacity to keep working in a manuscript, to keep editing, to keep listening to others' voices, and to keep trying to understand the text. So this kind of natural talent, okay, is there, and it's great when some people have it, but other people who maybe think, oh, I do not have a natural talent, maybe they can develop an amazing talent. So I'm very optimistic with people and their talent.
Is there also a reverse side of this creative writing process, one that can maybe lead you to some certain cliches up to the point when you practically recognize the technique, taking the first step before the natural talent, before the instinct, before the awe in front of a literary good piece?
Okay, so I think the issue that a writer has to think is, okay, what I want to write, or what do I feel to write, and what do I want to tell? It's true that there is people who perceive writing as a profession, who they want to have success, and they want to have a kind of the life of a writer. I always say people, the life of a writer doesn't exist, because it's a really hard work. And if you are a writer, you are going to end trying to balance with another profession, maybe as a journalist, maybe, as a teacher. So, because the love for writing goes in one direction, and the success for your writing goes in a totally different direction. And maybe one day one of your book will make a great hit, but when you are thinking in a literary way of creating, when literature is the essence of your writing, success is not happening at the same time. Success is going to take time. It's going to take the understanding of the reader. You need the intelligence of your reader to balance, to understand, to go through the literary project that you are bringing. So it's true that people sometimes is looking for other type of writing, other type of success. Well, but maybe it's not the literary understanding that you are hoping as a writer.
Speaking of success, El Mapa de los Afectos has been awarded the prestigious Nadal Prize. What kind of motivation works best for you?
Well, for me, that was a surprise in the matter that when I wrote the book, I gave it to my agent. And my agent, Shell, is a very passionate lady, young woman. And she read the book and she said, Anna, this is excellent. We have to send it to contest. This is really good. And I was, okay, whatever. Shell, if you feel that, you know what I mean? I was, traveling back to Iowa. I was teaching in Zurich. I was going back to Iowa City. I had my book. I had the manuscript. I felt that I had everything I want to say was there. So I trust her. Say, if you really think it's a really good book, let's try it. Otherwise, and she said, well, otherwise it doesn't happen. They will want it because this is really good. Publisher companies are going to want this manuscript. It's excellent, Anna. So I was very, very happy when it happened. You see me like, oh my God, I was very, very happy. So that is very nice because that allows you to be known by many more readers, and that is excellent, and also find translators, and it's fantastic. So I was very, very happy. It was a plus for my passion for writing.
Well, speaking about this passion for writing, it seems that in your case, it is a family tradition, since you are the daughter of the well-known writer José María Merino. And I was going to ask you, what lesson learned from your father do you still carry in your heart even today?
Well, it's fantastic. My father, José María Merino, is fantastic, and I grew up reading books. So for me, to have literature at home, to have a very well-known writer, someone with such a passion for literature is fantastic. It's something that I share with other people. I share with teachers that the passion for books is something that has to grow at home. And if you don't have a family who reads, it's fundamental to have teachers to share that passion with kids, with the students. So yes, I've been very lucky. And so family is in my family. My father is an amazing writer. And now my husband, because my husband is Manuel Vilas. Manuel Vilas, the writer, Spanish writers of Ordesa. I don't know if you know that book. So he's a very well-known writer, a poet. So I have literature everywhere. The only thing is we commute because we've been together since Manuel and me since 2014. So we commute in and out from the United States to Spain. So yes, there's something with literature around me. My family tradition is everywhere.
And my last question, in a humble and let us say mutually understood and generous reverse gesture, is there something about writing that you would like to transmit to your father?
Well, I think we share a lot of things. My father and me, we converse a lot, and I think I'm happy with the passion he gave me, so I keep the same passion alive. There is one genre that I developed that is theater, that he didn't. So sometimes he say, oh, well, I never wrote theater, Anna. You are very courage to go through theater because theater is pretty complex and to put together plays is pretty complex, and I have experience doing that. So on the family tradition, I was the one who brought theater at home to the house, to the family house.
I see. Well, Ana Merino, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Doamnelor, domnilor, ediția limitată de astăzi se închide aici. Sunt Marius Constantinescu, citiți nelimitat!